You can see this as a introduction in working with our dragon allies, but that means that we begin to realize and learn from it that we are conscious creators and that the dragons are the ones who help us to do that optimally. So besides a general introduction, you will connect with those dragons that are working with the elemental powers of creation that are most commonly used by people, and you will connect with those 11 dragons that are, let's say, the most commonly used ones by everybody. So yeah, what are dragons? There is a general depiction of dragons, and that is that they are destructive. That's especially true in the West. And this is an example that you see here, how they are often depicted. But they're also seen as the wise ones, the ones that is holding treasures or protecting treasures. And in some movies, you see that those treasures are, of course, gold. And in others, you see that they have to do with wisdom, like in this particular image. And we see with the increasing interest in dragons that there's also all kinds of what I call nice pictures, like this cute little dragon, and people love those images. So there is quite a mix in the way we from the West are looking at the dragons. But if you look at the East, then dragons are always seen as something positive. And it helps you with abundance, with good luck, good fortune. They are protectors. And as you can see, they are depicted quite differently, more often without wings. And they have a certain number of claws, or toes at their claws. And the one that you see here is in the past only for the emperor. And if you were using a dragon or an image with 5 claws, you were in deep problems. And that is changing now, although still the most common depiction is with 4 claws. So the first question we need to answer, do they really exist? Or are they all figments of our imagination? Or are they symbols for certain beings? It's true that the names for these beings that we are going to connect with are not always being dragons. They're also known as nature spirits. They're also known as maybe even angels. But we still use the name dragons because that is what they prefer. So what you see in this statement is that when a species exists, there needs to be an information system that makes that existence possible. And that is called a morphogenetic system. True for all species, visible, invisible. Dragons are basically invisible, some exceptions. Some people can see them, but basically they are not visible, and still they need energy and information system to make their existence possible. So that system works actually in 2 different ways. It is a general field that holds the full potential, and then there is a certain level of realization of that potential. That's what you find on Earth in energy lines and grids. And vortexes are actually connections between the potential and that what has been realized. And we will come back to that because it has an importance and relevance for working with dragons. And you see here an example of the network of one of the dragon species. And what you see is that there is this form of irregular rectangles or almost squares, and each of the dots is actually a vortex. So you see this with basically all dragon species. There's one group that's an exception, and we will come to that later. So this is the proof, you can say, they exist because they do have a system that allows their existence. And that is what we call a morphogenetic system. And you see one of those vortexes of the map You can see here, I often made an essence of that, and you can see the bottle of water is standing at the center of the vortex. The vortex is much larger, can go over miles of distance, but the most pure energy, if you want to connect, is in the center of the vortex. And the research of all those vortexes led to a surprising number of species that I summarized in this book called Dragons, Guardians of Creative Powers. So if you really want to work with them, it's not a reading book, it's actually a workbook. Then this is a book where you find the information of all the species as they are currently existing. So what we discovered by studying is that there are 45 dragon species. Quite surprising. So if you say, no, the dragons are looking like this, or no, I see them totally different, you may connect with different species. And there are groups in 5 groups, and we will look at that in more detail. We cannot go in all 45 species. If you want to do that, then you buy the book and you will find all the information you then need in order to work with all of them. So yes, this is actually already a simplification of a larger that you will see later, but basically what you see here is the Gaia morphogenetic system creates Mother Earth, and within Mother Earth there are all kinds of processes going on, and she is influenced by the different star systems. When we talk about the dragons, then the Earth is needing to, you can say, provide an aspect, and in this case a star system called Cassiopeia is doing that also. Now you may think that's weird, but actually it's the most common phenomenon that exists, and you can take yourself as an example. You have this physical body that's completely coming from Mother Earth, and you have your spiritual essence that is connecting and tries to work in collaboration with the physical system to express itself in this world. And in a sense, every living being is doing the same thing. So believe it or not, but a tree is a physical form and has also what you can call a spiritual essence. And every plant and every animal is the same case. So in this case of dragons, what a physical system is what I've learned to call crystalline beings. And you see here that there are 3 different levels, if you want, of crystalline beings. The smallest one is level 1 and the largest is level 3. And they have an interesting dynamic. But before sharing that dynamic, let's look at something that can help you to understand crystalline beings. You see 2 crystal skulls, and these were the 2 first crystal skulls that I had. And the one at the left, which is white marble, and the right one, Sam, were standing on a table. And one day I was talking with my teacher in intuitive development, and she said to me, do you see those little lights jumping in and out of this white crystal skull? And my reaction was, no, I don't see that. No. He said, well, look. And as you may know, in order to see the non-visible, you need to adjust the frequency range with which you attune to something. So for me, it took a while before I found the right frequency range, and suddenly I thought, wow, yeah, you're right. There are these little lights jumping in and out, and I think there may be 7. Well, I may be right, I may be wrong. There were 7 different colors that we saw jumping in and out, but I was not sure whether they were always having the same color. But at least we found these tiny little beings that are moving in and out of that skull. And, to be honest, I forgot that until later when I saw this image. And this is the image also of a crystal skull, and the caretaker at the time believed that there was an alien connected with this crystal skull. And he did everything to prove that he was right. And one of the ways they did it is by, having this particular way of photographing, creating all kinds of electromagnetic fields. And then they got these two little lights. And at the moment that I saw it, like, wow, that's what I saw. These are the crystalline beings. Or this guy was able to photograph them. And it strengthens my belief that what I saw was something more real than I wanted to believe at the time, other than, oh, an interesting phenomenon. But the story continues. And it continues till the point that, and I actually more or less forgot about crystalline beings, was when I was visited by somebody who had an ancient crystal skull. And as soon as he came in, Jeannie kicked him, the skull, and me out of the house because the energy was really very bad. And it has been used for all kinds of, you can say, black magic kind of activities. But for whatever strange reason, I felt I needed to do something about it. And I worked on that skull for months. And at a certain moment, it was good enough to bring it back into the house. And when I was removing what I hoped was the last layer of unbalanced energies, programmed energies, if you want, suddenly a being jumped out, or something jumped out and jumped into Jeannie, and which was very uncomfortable for her. And the only thing I could say, get a crystal skull. And she took this crystal skull, which is a human-sized one, and of rose quartz, and the being immediately went into that one. If you're very sensitive, you may feel her because she's still in it. And that is the one that I finally figured out was the level 3, the largest of the 3 crystalline beings. So we go back to the more larger graph. So forget for a moment, we go back first to those crystalline beings. What we found is that when you have about between 12 and 20 crystalline beings of level 1, that they suddenly start merging. I don't know what the trigger is, but they merge into a crystalline being of level 2. And about the same amount, depending on how intense the energy in each of the individuals is, they merge together and create the level 3. And then the level 3 is releasing again crystalline beings level 1. And that is a cycle. And from a certain perspective, the cycle continues forever. But sometimes one of the beings of level 3, and again, I don't know what the reason is and which one is able to do that, suddenly will be entered by a spiritual being from Cassiopeia, and that is the dragons. Yeah. So dragons are, like us, a combination of physical and spiritual. And then you see here below the 5 different groups: the primordial dragons, duality dragons, oneness dragons, the master dragons, and the cosmic dragons. We will briefly look at all 5 groups, but we will work with the duality dragons because that are the ones that almost everyone is working with. So, crystalline beings and dragons are always connected to all 4 elemental powers, and one of them is dominant. Now, elemental powers are the powers that you need to create, and we know them very, very well. You see them in this particular image, and I put them into the form where it's commonly used, even although they put the different elemental powers or elements at different places on the circle. But what you see here is a placement as the dragons want it to be. So you see there is fire in the east, with opposite the earth in the west. In the south is water, and in the north is air. That are the 4 elemental powers. They're also the 4 elements, but there is a difference, and it's very important to understand this difference. And I summarized it in this image. In working with dragons as the ones that help us to become conscious creators, we will talk about elemental powers and not elements. And the next sentence is summarizing the importance of the difference. Elements are manifestations. The powers, the elemental powers, are not manifestations, they are powers, they are energies. They are aspects of consciousness, and with it we can set consciousness into motion to create. But the elements are manifestations, and in order to create a manifestation, you need all four elemental powers. In different ratios, yes, but you need them all. And in the elements, you see that one of them is very, very dominant. And so if you take water, yeah, water is an element, it's physical, you can drink it, you can swim in it, you can touch it. It's a manifestation. And in order to manifest it, you needed all four elemental powers. And there is so much confusion that if you take this out of this lecture or presentation, you're already quite a step ahead of understanding the dynamic in our world and how we can use that for creation. So an interesting aspect was immediately the question, okay, so there's one of them is dominant. So does that mean that only crystalline beings with the same dominant elemental power are coming together to create then a dragon, for example, with that elemental power? And that's not the case. All kinds of different dominant elemental powers are still coming together and create something that has another elemental powers as a dominance. So for example, you can have a level 3 crystalline being with a dominant fire that will become a dragon that has as dominance water. So it is all depending on what and is merging with what. Now I mentioned already that besides this physical form, the crystalline beings, that there is a spiritual essence that comes from somewhere in the stars, and I mentioned it was Cassiopeia as a star system. And you see that in this particular image. It's known as the W, very easy to recognize in the sky, and it has these 5 dominant stars that form the W. Well, I've always accepted they come from Cassiopeia, but at a certain moment I was curious, but is there one of those 5 stars where they, or from that area where they in particular come from? And that turns to be true. You see that in this image. It is the one with the slightly different coloration called Shadar. It's also sometimes written as Shadir, and is also known as Alpha Cassiopeiae. So that is where the dragon souls, so to speak, or the spiritual essence of the dragons are coming from. So now you have at least some understanding that dragons are truly existing beings, but actually exist in a similar way as all other beings, a combination of a spiritual essence in a physical system through which it expresses itself. So I was of course curious, okay, when something comes in from the stars, it comes in through a portal, are the Cassiopeia portals common? Well, it depends on which area of the world you're in. I was actually a bit surprised to learn that it is not as common as I thought in the area where I live, which is in the Sedona area in Arizona. But if you, for example, go to the Netherlands, and this is in one of the villages in the Netherlands, they are far more common. There are many churches actually in the Netherlands that hold a portal to Cassiopeia. And since those churches are all built on old pagan sites, sacred sites, it's interesting that already since a long time, people seem to have some connection with Cassiopeia, which means actually with the energies of dragons. And the area of the Netherlands is moving partly into Germany and partly into Belgium. And to give you an example, this is the Alte Kirche, which means the old church in a town in Germany. So the overview, you've seen this already, but just to summarize, because now we will briefly look at the different groups. So the dragons, as I mentioned, 45 species, are into 5 groups, of which actually 4 groups have a connection with the crystalline beings. The 5th group, the cosmic dragons, are actually only spiritual essences, but they still are connected with the earth so that there is a grid system of them. I didn't know that was possible, but obviously it is. You will see also that if you go from the left to the right, that you see numbers. 4 plus 3, 8 plus 3, 12 plus 3, and again 4 plus 3. That are the numbers of dragons. And I will show you why I use this plus 3. And again, it's different with the cosmic dragons, as we will see later briefly. And this is why there is this 4 plus 3 or 8 plus 3. The 4, 8, and 12 are actually referring to the edge of the central plane of a sphere. In this case, it is 4 plus 3, and those 3 are actually the north-south axis. So what is in this axis that is coming back in all 4 groups is always the same thing. In the north, there is the field. So that is the dragon that represents or works or helps you to work with the field. At the South Pole, there is the grid. That's what is already manifested. And the central one is determining whether you come more from the field or more from the grid. And you can say is the dragon that helps you with the starting point in every creation. So the central dragon, the dot in the center, is actually the dragon that invites you to create from the most optimal state. It's the one that brings it all together. So it also tries to bring you into a state that you can connect most optimally with all the elemental powers. So that is the essence. So that means that the upper half of the sphere is all about potential and the lower one is all about manifestation, what has been manifested. And how that happens and the success of that is happening in that plane that is in the center, that cuts it into 2 halves. So this is the principle. So you may understand, you can also imagine that there are 8 points on that circle or 12 points at that circle. So interesting thing is that when I started, and actually in the very, very first workshop that I gave in the Netherlands, we were looking at 4 dragons only. That is all that I had found and was guided to find. So that's what I thought that was there. And it was a beautiful starting point. And during that workshop, we saw 2 dragons emerging. And many of the participants saw that. And we saw them as the white and the black dragon. I had no idea at the time what that means, but that is what we saw. Now we know that the white dragon is the dragon of the morphogenetic field and the black one of the morphogenetic grid. And their symbol, because that's still in a form of duality, that was in the center is what we know as the yin-yang sign. Where you see that in the potential of which is the white one, in the potential is already the manifestation included. And in the manifestation will always be still the spiritual essence. And you see that with the dragons all the time, determining and reminding you of the importance of that. The importance of realizing there is always potential, there's always what is an aspect that is realized, and that needs to find a certain balance. And the balance is depending on the totality, not only on that particular issue of that particular person or that particular part of Mother Earth, no. And the totality determines what is optimal ratio, what is actually the yin-yang of each situation. I love this symbol, and especially in connection to the dragons. So going back to here, we are going to look more into the details of that. And what we will do is all the time looking at the central circle, but keeping in mind all the time this axis. It is important to realize that because actually that sphere is representing a dynamic that we call a torus. A torus has a central tube. Yeah? And the top is always bringing in the spiritual, putting it into the earth, or from the earth into the spiritual realms, because there's always an exchange. And the still point is actually that what the central dragon in the dragon system is representing, or in our situation, it is our hearts that tells us to go to that point of stillness where everything is in complete balance and where the flows and the dynamics of the whole system are optimally. In a sense, you can say we are a walking torus, so if our system is functioning optimal, we get this particular phenomenon. But you can see that many systems always have the same dynamic and try to bring all those torus systems into harmony. And then we have oneness. And then everything is dynamically interacting with each other. So let's go through the groups briefly. So the primordial dragons, there are the very first dragons that were existence, and there are only 28 left. And they help us to connect with the principles of the four elemental powers. Originally, there were only primordial dragons. So that means that mankind at the time, humanity at the time, when they were still more able to connect with them, could get all information from the dragons. They were holding the wisdom of creation. And people were trying to force the dragons to give it to them and use it for their own benefit. And that is where you can say the subconscious idea of the fight between humanity and dragons comes from here in the West. While the East was more focused on spiritual elements, so they didn't go as strongly into that, opposing forces kind of thing where everything was going to be used for personal profit. So those dragons realized at a certain moment, in collaboration with their ancestors from the Cassiopeia system, that something else need to happen, and that is when you can say the elemental powers were split off. They were split off in 6, as we will see. So the primordial dragons hold 1, the duality holds 2, and the oneness holds 3 of those aspects, which brings it in total to 6. And the masters will bring that together, as we will see. So they are helping, but they are to some degree almost wary still of us. In this particular little cave in the Sedona area is where one of those 28 is still living, if you want to call it. What you see as the bottle in the front is where also is the center of a vortex. But there's this dragon, and this dragon, which is a primordial earth dragon, is the one that I have been connecting with a lot. Brought a few people to this particular cave and have been meditating for hours and hours with this particular dragon. And she really has helped me to understand a lot about dragons, elemental powers. And without her and my guide, which I call Draculaire, I would not have been able to write the book and discover everything I discovered. So this is a very special place for me, and I honor the primordial dragons deeply. The duality dragons help us to create in a world that functions from a polarity point of view, which is what we do. There are hardly anybody who's truly functioning from a oneness point of view. We may go moments into oneness, but that's different. And so it's the main way from where we function, and that means that we have 8 duality, there's 4 powers in duality, and the 3 again of the axis. And so if you see that in this particular image, and you see the 8 in the central plane, and of course the 3 of the axis. And to help you to see the duality, and you see that the east and the southeast are both fire, as is the south and the southwest, both water, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so you see here that the powers are existing in duality, and this is how we usually function, and this is the one that we will connect it deeper with in this presentation and the following up meditation. So the oneness dragons helps to create, as I mentioned, in a world functioning from a oneness point of view. And the more we work with the dragons from the duality, the more we will also begin to have moments where we can work from this oneness perspective. The duality dragons will guide us increasingly to work from a oneness point of view. And you can imagine how that looks like, the central plane that holds now 12 points. And to connect them again, you see there are actually trinities. Trinities that are the masculine, feminine, and the child aspect of each of those powers. So you move from the duality, overcome the duality, and see the oneness, which is also a way of saying, you will increasingly work from love and create from a point of love. So as mentioned, there are 6 aspects of each of the 4 elemental powers, and the dragons help us to integrate that. That is leading to a mastership. Then you are a master creator, a master co-creator, of course, because we create in collaboration with Mother Earth and all other beings, but then you reach a certain level of mastership. And working with each of them is doable, but to integrate them into one power from where you always create requires a lot of training. But that is where the master dragons are inviting us to go to. Yeah. So the dragon riders are actually the ones that can really ride the master dragons, because it masters the different powers in such a way that you can bring them together. And then finally we have the cosmic dragons. Well, they are actually overseers of the 3 dragon groups: primordial, duality, and oneness dragons, and of the dragons of the morphogenetic field and grids. That's the 3 plus 2. You see that in this image. You see the 3 in the plane of the double tetrahedron. We will not go deeper into these ones, but it gives you at least a completion of understanding the 5 different groups. And the interesting thing is, as soon as you go to the cosmic dragons, is no longer irregular rectangles, but you see that it are irregular triangles. And often triangles gives an indication of more spiritual elements that are involved. And this is one of those vortexes, to see that they really do exist. You can go to these places, you can sit there, you can meditate there, and in that way you can connect with the cosmic dragons and feel how different they are from all the other 4 groups. So as I mentioned, we all create from a duality perspective most of the time. So we will connect with those dragons that are most dominantly present, the dragons that almost everyone is connecting with a few exceptions. And they are the ones helping us to create in the world where we are actually living in. Moving increasingly to the world that we are moving to, which is the oneness world. So we will look a little bit more in detail to that. So instead of looking at the sphere, we look at the plane itself. That is a little bit easier. You know that the dot in the center is actually showing 3 different points, but this helps to understand. So here you see the 8. the 8 points on the circle. One of the things that I have not mentioned is that on a circle, every point is equally important. So those 8 points are equally important. Those aspects of the creative powers, elemental powers, are equally important. And each of those 8 has its own dragon. And again, in red, you see the 4 elemental powers in the dual form. And I'd like to go with you through, before we do a meditation to connect deeper with them, I'd like to go with you through those different dragons with their elemental powers and the qualities that they have. So you have to realize that the first step is to go into the center. Connect with the central dragon. And in collaboration with the central dragon, you will feel, whether you are more coming from that what has been manifested, which is in most cases the case, or tap into some aspects of the potential that hasn't been realized. And some people do that. That's their job, so to speak. Now, being in that center is where your preparation is. It actually tells you, from what level of consciousness you will start. And then from there, the first step is the east. You move first to the east. That is where you set actually the intent. You prepare in the center to be able to set the conscious intent as clearly as possible. And you need the elemental power of fire and the dragon of the east for that. So it's always very important to invite those 8 dragons and say, I really want to do the creation in the most optimal way. Please, please, please help me. And if you forget and you see what goes wrong, you can invite a specific dragon. So conscious intent, the dragon of the east. The next step is concept of self. You may think, hey, wait a minute, what has that to do with fire? Well, this is where your passion is. This is your consciousness as you experience it. The concept of self is actually your self-worth, your self-esteem, and is the awareness of who you are. And in that first step, if you have a low concept of self, a low self-esteem, and don't believe in yourself, you may understand that not much of your conscious intent is surviving this step. So the dragon of the southeast is helping you to maintain as optimal as possible concept of yourself, to allow what you set as an intent to be maintained as optimal as possible, so that it can be passed on. And then it's passed on to the south, the water, creativity. Here in the south is where you create. The dragon of the south is the one that helps you to create. Yes, it's depending on how powerful your conscious intent is, or what is left of it after it goes through your concept of self, but that determines the creation. It is, you can compare it the best with, the sperm reaching the egg. Okay? So the egg is the receptor, the water elemental power is the receptor of the conscious intent. And the dragon of the south helps that you are in the most optimal state. It's also, water is also your emotion. So if you have let's say, a not so balanced emotional state, you will diminish that what you receive from the southeast even more, so that it's even less likely that you will manifest what you want to manifest. And the next step is the southwest, which is also a water dragon. And that dragon is helping you to allowing to unfold. And this is, from my perspective, seen in working with people and doing this kind of work with people, is the most challenging point. Allowing things to unfold, understanding that everything has its own time. It's like going back to the moment that a woman is pregnant. You cannot speed up the time of the pregnancy. In the same way, you cannot speed up the manifestation of your creation. It sometimes needs time to grow, to develop. So this is a very important one for a lot of people, because I've seen so many people challenged by allowing things to unfold while they are creating. And then we reach the Earth Dragon in the West. And there is where you see manifested what your intent is. So what you want to intend and what you actually see as manifestation is in most cases not exactly what you had hoped for. And the reasons you understand now, that has to do with the 3 points below. So also you may understand now that that lower half that we went through is actually the manifestation. So now you have your manifestation. So why do you need the other steps? And that is again the biggest problem of humanity. That we don't look at those. So what does that mean? So if you go to the second dragon of the earth in the northwest, is the dragon of the natural laws and cycles. How well does your manifestation fit into the system where it's part of, the earth system, with its natural laws and cycles? Does it fit in there? That's a key point. Or are we creating what we want and polluting? So this is another step that we have difficulty with. And a lot of companies that are creating are not looking at that aspect at all. And then we come to the north. And you may be surprised, giving it life. If I've created something, I don't give it life. And yes, you do. The air is actually love and life force. And when you are in your right, you can say mental construction, then you will lovingly and respectfully look at your creations, because that determines the energy of it, the quality of it, the aliveness of it. And then there is the last step, and that is the conscious change. So after having looked everything, and you can say the upper half is the evaluation part, then you have learned what went right and what went wrong. And from that, what you have learned, you can set an intent to change that which you feel and believe and know that you need to change. And then you enter again into the next cycle. You need actually a moment of going to the center for reflection before you then go. Most people go immediately to the next one and the next one and the next one. But it is good to have moments of reflection. So that is the key. But there are some other elements. You see that in total there are 4 axes, 8 points, 4 axes. Well, one axis we have already seen. That is the intent manifestation axis. But what is the biggest challenge is the north-south axis, this axis, because that's the mind axis. And the mind with its beliefs and its emotions can jeopardize the movement, through this cycle very, very strongly. And to explain that, I will show you this. I now split, the square into 2 halves. Yeah, you can say the half of the east and the half of the west. And what is interesting is that those 2 triangles of the 2 halves are reflecting actually the higher and the lower mind. The lower mind at the left is the mind where we believe that the mind knows best and is telling how we should create. And that means it has a thought, it has some creative emotions, and we manifest. And we forget the spiritual elements of it. And because we forget that, we can never look at the totality. So we have also the higher mind, which gives us the messages from our spiritual essence. And we need all that. We need to bring those 2, which for many people are separate things, mostly living from the left side. We need to bring them together, and then we have the circle of the dragons, as we just saw. So 2 more axes, the southeast, northwest. If you are totally in your self-concept, in your ego in the southwest, you don't care about whether it's good for this planetary system or not. If you work only for the planetary system, you may forget that we also have certain needs in order to function properly. So we have to find a balance. In the same way as we have to find a balance between the northeast and the southwest with the help of those dragons, because conscious change can easily lead to control, while the allowing to unfold can lead to, let's say, becoming passive. And of course, also there we need to find a balance. So now you understand all the different duality aspects and how the different dragons can help us to overcome the problems that they can cause and use them as gifts instead of as problems. So we end with this one that you can look at while we are going to do a meditation to help you to connect with the powers and the dragons that are the guardians of it. The purpose of the following meditations is to make those dragons your allies, so that your way of functioning in this world as a creator, which you continue to do with every choice, that you do that increasingly in harmony with the totality, which will then lead in beginning to work increasingly with the oneness dragons and ultimately mastering it and then working with the master dragons. Don't make working with the master dragons your purpose. Working with the duality dragons is absolutely the first step. And for me, it's still the major way of understanding my way of functioning in this world. And I recommend that you will do the same thing. The rest will automatically evolve because the dragons will help you to do so. So you can do this with your eyes closed or your eyes open, looking at the circle and the different points. It's up to you, but make sure that we first go through a proper preparation before we make the connections, because connection has to do with the way you are connected with yourself. So let's start with a few deeper inhalations and exhalations to begin to relax. You heard a long story with a lot of information, and that pulls you out of your grounding, out of your physical awareness, out of, you can say, the realization of whether you're tensed or not tensed. So bring your whole awareness to your system, primarily your physical, and let go to the best of your ability of your tensions. And if you feel it somewhere, breathe into it and let go. Relax. And you may be able to feel that as soon as you start relaxing, there's a shift in your system. And there are many ways you can describe this shift, but one of the important aspects of it is that you, when you are relaxed, no longer need the control of your mind that tries to make the world safe, because when you are relaxed, the mind considered as being safe. And that means you can go more easily to your heart. So feel that shift. Feel that you can bring your awareness more fully to your heart. And your heart is your access to your spiritual essence. Some people call it to the soul, whatever term, higher self, whatever term you prefer. But let's stick for now to your spiritual essence. And through this connection with your spiritual essence, you also connect with light, your light, the light of your essence. And carried by that light is unconditional love. And feel to the best of your ability unconditional love. And it doesn't matter whether you can feel it 100%. We are all in training. That's why we are still in this duality phase, where we feel love for aspects of us at certain moments and not love other moments. But to the best of your ability, see whether you can both what you see as your positive and what you see as your negative sides, and embrace them in love. Because this is where you are, this is who you are. And the dragons will work with you, whatever state you are in, as long as you, to the best of your ability, come from your heart with your intention. The second important thing for them is whether you connect with Mother Earth or not. Because we are here to support Mother Earth. So feel your connection with Mother Earth. Feel, to the best of your ability, love for her. And allow your system to receive the love that she, without any shadow of a doubt, will give back to you. And as soon as you are connected with Mother Earth, you are connected with the dragon field. And the next steps is to find your direction in this dragon field. And as we have set as an intent, is to work with the dragons of the duality. So set the intent that with the help of Mother Earth and trusting the guidance of your heart, that you now have made the connection. So that we now can go to more details on individual dragons, but the connection is already there. And in your imagination, you go to the center of the sphere, or if you prefer, the center of the circle, knowing that you have in the center of the circle above you the dragon that is connected to the morphogenetic field of the duality dragons, and below you the dragon of the grid system of the duality dragons. And you are in the center connecting with the central dragon. And ask that central dragon to help you to make the most optimal connection with the existing or new information about the duality dragons that can help you in your creation process. And trust that you have made the connection, so that you can start on your journey of creation. And we create all the time, small things, big things. We use these powers all the time, but through this circle and the dragons connected with it, we can learn to use those powers more optimally by connecting with them, to make them a part of you. So let's move through the steps and move from the center to the east. And set your intent to connect with the dragon of the east. And ask the dragon to help you to connect with the energies of that point, which means the energies that helps you to set the most powerful intents, optimally in alignment with that, what is important for Mother Earth and what is important for you as an individual for your development. Feel that connection with this power and the dragon that is the guardian of it. And trust that you have made a connection. Yes, you can deepen it, but you have made the connection. So shift now your awareness to the southeast and greet the dragon of the southeast and make a connection. Set the intent to connect. Open your heart for this dragon. And ask now the dragon to help you to maintain to the best of your ability the most optimal concept of self possible for you. A concept of self that is allowing your intention to flow through without any diminishing of it, or at least restrict it as much as is possible. Make your connection with the elemental power and with the dragon that's the guardian of it. And with this connection with the two fire dragons, you now move again a step and enter the south. The south where the water dragon is located. Make a connection with the dragon of the south, the water dragon. And ask the dragon to help you to connect as optimally as possible with the elemental power of water, of creativity. And trust that this dragon will help you to bring you into the connection that's optimal for you now. And move now again a step and connect with the second water dragon, the dragon of the southwest. Make your connection. Open you through your heart for this wonderful ally. And ask this dragon to teach you patience that allows you to let things unfold in the time that they need. And this dragon definitely is so willing to help because it feels in the total field of humanity how challenging this is. Invite this dragon and you will deepen your connection with this elemental power and its guardian. And move again one step. And you will now reach the west, the earth dragon. Make your connection. Open your heart for this dragon. And ask this dragon to help you to manifest that what is possible in the most optimal way. Feel your connection with this elemental power of manifestation and the dragon of the west that is its guardian. And makes the next step, moving to the northwest, the second earth dragon. And connect with the dragon of the northwest by opening yourself through your heart for its presence and its gifts. Feel to the best of your ability the connection and ask this dragon to help you to always take into account the world in which you live. Always willing to be honest about your manifestation in relationship to Mother Earth. And trust that you have made the connection with the dragon of the northwest and the elemental power that it's the guardian of. And make yet another step, and now moving to the north, the elemental power of air. And connect with the dragon of the north. Open your heart for it so that you can make as deeply as possible a connection. And ask this dragon to help you to give life and respect to everything that you have created. Where you are not allowing your judgments to jeopardize, to bring that which you have created into the most optimal state. And feel that you have made a connection with this dragon and the elemental power that it is the guardian of. And make the next and last step on this circle, moving to the northeast, the second air dragon. Open your heart for this dragon, the dragon of the northeast, and ask this dragon to help you to get the insight that you need in order to make the change that's optimal for you and Mother Earth. Trust that through your heart you've made a connection with the dragon of the northeast and the power that it is the guardian of. So you completed the connection with the 11 dragons of the duality, the 11 duality dragons, the 3 of the central axis and the 8 of the plane. Bring yourself now in your imagination again into the center. And feel what has shifted or changed for you. Can you feel that you are really more part of this whole field of the duality dragons? Or that what has been manifested of them? Can you feel that you made a deeper connection? But more importantly, can you feel whether you're willing to deepen this connection? Knowing that with deepening the connection, you also connect deeper with the elemental powers that you actually knowingly or unknowingly use every day, many, many, many times. And that those wonderful dragon allies can help you to do that in a way that is supportive for your journey, but more important, that is optimal for Mother Earth and her journey. And that's why we came here. When we incarnated, we wanted to help and support Mother Earth on her journey. Be aware, and if you choose, you can go back, that in the power of the circle are also the powers of polarity. Be aware of the dynamic between the emotion and mental aspects that you have about this world. The duality of your spiritual and your physical system, who each want their own unique things. The duality of the concept of self, which easily can lead to ego versus the systems of Mother Earth, the greater good. And the polarity of the northeast and southwest, where you want to control instead of allowing things to unfold once set into motion. Learn to understand these powers with the help of your dragon allies, and you will enjoy life more than you may have ever done in your life before. Because then you will only create what is in alignment with the totality, and that creates joy, happiness, and an increasing feeling of love and respect. Thank the dragons for the willingness to connect with you. Take again a deep breath. Bring your awareness back. And when you feel ready, open your eyes in case you had closed them. Realize that this is a journey, not only the journey we have made, but also the journey of deepening these connections. You have these tools now available. Make this journey, do this meditation more often, and you will feel that the dragons will be there for you anytime you need them. That you can call them anytime you need them. But there's always one condition. As soon as you call them in solely for your own purpose, which means an extreme, let's say, focus on the southeast, your concept of self, your needs, they may not come. That's why you need the center, your heart, and a mind that is not controlling. Enjoy the connections you have made and know that there is an infinite number of potential that you can develop in working with these wonderful allies. I hope you enjoyed the journey.